people don't realize, I mean, you had a stroke years ago and you battled MS for almost 20 years?
Larry, let me tell you what's really crazy. I had a stroke less than 6 months ago.
Montel Williams was once a household name, captivating millions with his empathy and unwavering strength as both a decorated Navy officer and an Emmy-winning talk show host. But fame and success have not shielded him from a relentless battle few saw coming. A health crisis that gradually changed everything. How does a man who conquered the Navy and daytime television confront a disease that threatens his very identity and independence? The answer lies in a journey marked not just by hardship, but by courage and an unyielding refusal to be defined by tragedy. Mounting health crisis. Montel Williams's life took an unexpected turn when his body began sending signals that something was seriously wrong. Early on, he noticed numbness in his hands and a persistent burning sensation in his legs that no amount of rest or exercise could soothe. For a man whose identity had been forged through discipline and endurance, these symptoms were deeply unsettling. They hinted at a silent battle happening inside him, one that threatened to dismantle everything he had built over decades. Despite his history of physical toughness and mental resilience, Montel faced a dilemma no amount of willpower could immediately solve. The sensations were unpredictable, episodic, and growing steadily worse. A cruel mystery his own body was presenting. What made this challenge especially isolating was that symptomatic evidence was often invisible to others, making his suffering a private ordeal unseen by a public that only knew his strength. This invisible nature added layers of complexity to his struggle. The gradual deterioration meant Montel was forced into a daily negotiation with his own nervous system. Tasks that once required no thought, holding a pen, climbing stairs, or simply walking, became exercises in cautious management. The disease was relentless, but did not unfold as a single dramatic event. Instead, it crept into his life like an unwelcome shadow, growing stronger even as he tried to push it aside. At the peak of his career, Montel Williams had every reason to believe his body would carry him through. Yet, the condition quietly gained ground, highlighting the stark reality that no amount of achievement or fame could shield him from health's unpredictable hand. The discipline and endurance that carried him through years in the Navy and television now faced a test on an entirely different battlefield, one without medals or audience applause. His symptoms worsened steadily, complicating his daily routine and professional commitments. Sleep, once a place of rest and renewal, became a battleground itself, fractured by pain and neurological exhaustion. This fatigue was unlike ordinary tiredness. It was a deep, unrelenting kind of physical drain that no amount of rest seemed to erase. Each morning started as a negotiation, a question of how much his body would allow him to endure that day. What loomed large was the uncertainty. No clear timeline, no guaranteed outcome, just the steady advance of an invisible opponent. Montel's public persona was synonymous with strength, yet inside, he faced a condition that refused to show mercy. The progression did not discriminate based on past victories, it simply moved forward on its own terms. The challenge was now not just about maintaining a public facade, but confronting his personal limits in raw and honest terms. This was a battle fought quietly, within the body and mind, where victory was measured in small triumphs rather than grand accomplishments. Whatever lay ahead, Montel's journey had shifted from the familiar public stages to a deeply private war. To understand the gravity of this personal battle, we must first look back at the foundations of Montel Williams's character. Early life and discipline. Montel Williams's story begins in Baltimore, Maryland, a city known for its tough edges and unspoken codes of resilience. Born on July 3, 1956, Montel was raised in a household where dignity was earned, not given. His father, Herman Williams, was a strict disciplinarian whose authority was absolute, shaping the young boy's early understanding of expectations and accountability. Warmth and encouragement were measured carefully, with excellence expected not as an achievement, but as the basic standard. His mother, Marjorie, offered a different kind of love, quiet, steady, and deeply present in moments when discipline left emotional gaps. She was the emotional anchor in a home dominated by high demands and rigorous standards. Even with her support, the pressure of earning one's place was a constant companion, living alongside the family like an unseen tenant. For Montel, this environment crafted a relentless internal dialogue, a voice that questioned if he was enough. As the second of 4 children, Montel learned early that success required presence and perseverance rather than natural ease. School was not a refuge, but another arena where he had to prove himself day after day. He was not necessarily the most talented student, but he compensated for any uncertainty with sheer determination. By his teen years, this need to prove himself had become almost a driving force, less about external validation and more about silencing the inner doubt. This early life shaped the qualities that would govern Montel's adulthood: endurance, focus, and an unwillingness to retreat in the face of difficulty. Yet, beneath that armor was a depth of searching and sensitivity few saw. The discipline of his upbringing didn't break him. It drafted him into a lifetime commitment to meet challenges head-on, no matter the cost. When Montel entered the United States Naval Academy, these lessons were put to the ultimate test. The Academy was an institution still adjusting to a changing society, especially for young black men striving for acceptance in traditionally rigid structures. With no guarantee of success, Montel relied heavily on endurance to overcome every physical, intellectual, and social hurdle that crossed his path. Graduating in 1980 with a degree in general engineering and a commission as an officer, Montel went on to serve 22 years in the Marine Corps and Navy. He earned respect as a cryptologist and as one of the first black officers in several specialized roles, breaking through barriers that remained formidable despite his achievements. His military career reflected not just skill, but the cultural toughness instilled from childhood, discipline as survival. More than honors and medals, what this period cemented was a mindset, the belief that silence should never be mistaken for weakness, and that the measure of a man was his capacity to persevere. That mindset would define Montel long after his uniform came off, carrying him into a world as public and unpredictable as television. It was from this foundation that the man who touched millions would rise, armed with more than charisma, armed with enduring resolve. Discipline and resolve brought Montel to the peak of military success, but few could have predicted the leap he was about to make. Rise to television fame. Montel Williams' transition from a decorated Navy officer to a charismatic daytime television host was nothing short of extraordinary. The worlds he bridged, one defined by strict military protocol and the other by the unpredictable tides of public attention, were vastly different in every way. It was a move few would dare, but Montel approached it with the same relentless determination that had carried him through the Naval Academy and decades of service. His first steps into the public eye came in 1989, when he began speaking about substance awareness and at-risk youth, blending his personal alarm over lost lives with a clear, commanding presence. Audiences were captivated by this rare combination of military authority and heartfelt authenticity. It was not performance, but a sincere presence that set him apart in an era when television often favored spectacle over substance. By 1991, Montel had attracted the attention of Paramount television producers after delivering a speech that seemed to radiate genuine sincerity. His voice was needed in a crowded media landscape full of loud confrontations and shallow debates. In the fall of that year, The Montel Williams Show debuted nationally, quickly establishing itself as a program that listened first and judged last. Montel's approach disrupted daytime TV norms. He did not humiliate his guests or chase ratings with cheap drama. Instead, he created a space where difficult conversations were welcomed and real stories were honored. Veterans, families struggling with addiction, and children trapped in unforgiving systems found a voice on his show. His courage to finish conversations that nobody else was willing to start gave the program a resonant honesty. Success followed, but it was neither instant nor uncomplicated. Winning a Daytime Emmy Award was a breakthrough for both Montel and the industry, signaling that empathy and integrity could yield excellence. Yet, Montel himself admitted that, with a larger platform came even greater pressure. The audience was bigger, and every misstep carried a weight that few could bear. Over 17 years, his show reached over 20 million households across 170 countries, numbers that placed him at the pinnacle of daytime television. Beyond the studio, Montel expanded into motivational speaking, production, and advocacy, using his platform to advance causes close to his heart. His military background earned him credibility as a commentator on veterans' issues and social justice, further deepening his influence. Despite the public success, the show's relentless pace demanded a toll on Montel's personal life. The man who valued discipline and presence found himself stretched thin by the competing demands of fame and family. Still, his refusal to dilute himself or his message made him a rare figure in media, a man whose authenticity never wavered even as the spotlight intensified. Yet, as success grew, so too did the strains on the life Montel had built, pressures that would test the very resilience that had carried him thus far. The cost of fame. Montel Williams's rise to stardom came with a price few could have anticipated. While the world saw his polished television presence and commanding voice, the private toll of fame was unfolding quietly behind the scenes. His relentless schedule and mounting public demands stretched the man who had always prized discipline to his limits, testing relationships that required more than occasional attention. Over the course of his career, Montel was married 3 times, each marriage reflecting the challenges of balancing personal life with professional obligations. His first marriage to Rochelle Webb, during his active military service, produced 2 daughters but eventually dissolved as the pressures of an accelerating career made sustaining the relationship difficult. Despite the painful ending, both parties maintained privacy and respect, shielding family matters from public scrutiny. His second marriage coincided with the early years of his television success. From 1990 to 1994, Montel and Grace Moley tried to maintain a steady life amidst the whirlwind of a rising show and an increasingly demanding public profile. But the widening gulf between the consumed pace of his work and the rhythms of domestic life proved corrosive. Montel himself later acknowledged the absence that fractured those years, not through neglect, but sheer unavailability. The third marriage to Tara Fowler in 2002 came at a time when Montel was coping not only with fame, but personal upheaval linked to his emerging health crisis. Tara's role was less that of a rescuer and more of a witness to a man grappling with a disease that would alter everything. They raised a daughter together, Winter Grace, but ultimately, even this union could not withstand the complex pressures mounting around them. Beyond the marriages, the emotional landscape of Montel's life was shaped by the paradox of public presence and private distance. He was known to genuinely care, but struggled to be fully present for those closest to him. Friends and associates describe a man who never stopped caring, but lacked the ability to pause long enough to express it. In relationships, that simple act of stopping, of truly being there, can mean everything, and its absence carries deep consequences. The cost of fame was not just measured in broken marriages, but in the quiet erosion of intimacy and trust. The relentless work ethic that built his platform demanded sacrifices few outside his inner circle could see. For a man whose mission was to give voice to the voiceless, the tragedy was that those closest to him often felt unheard or edged aside. This tension between public achievement and private loss underscored the increasingly complex portrait of Montel Williams. The platform that had made him a trusted voice also exacted a toll that was both personal and profound. Success in the spotlight did not inoculate him from the loneliness and strain that so often accompany it. Ultimately, the narrative of these years is not one of failure, but of relentless striving. Montel's honesty about his shortcomings, the acknowledgement that the people closest to me paid the price, adds a layer of humanity to a man often seen only through the lens of accomplishment. It reminds us that greatness often comes with sacrifice, and the price is rarely visible on screen. The personal upheaval Montel faced would take on a new dimension with a diagnosis that redefined his life's narrative and tested his resilience in ways he never expected. Multiple sclerosis diagnosis. At the height of his career, Montel Williams was confronted by a diagnosis that would change everything. In 1999, after years of subtle but persistent symptoms, he was told he had multiple sclerosis, a chronic neurological disease where the immune system attacks the protective sheath of nerve fibers. The disease disrupts signals between the brain and body, resulting in unpredictable and often debilitating physical impairments. For a man whose life had been built on physical rigor and control, the diagnosis was devastating in its implications. He had been trained to endure discomfort and conceal vulnerability, but MS offered no respite and no guarantees. Unlike wounds that heal, this was a progressive threat to the very foundation of his body's function and his identity as a soldier, a presenter, and a father. Montel's symptoms manifested quietly at first: numbness in his hands, burning sensations in his legs, trembling that made simple tasks a challenge. These signs were unlike fatigue or injury. They were signals from a nervous system in chaos. The disease's progression was merciless, attacking the pathways that allowed control, sensation, and mobility, all essential to the man who had once demanded perfection from himself every day. The psychological burden was as significant as the physical one. Multiple sclerosis carries with it profound uncertainty because it offers no clear timeline or pattern. Montel described the weight of not knowing, never sure what the disease would do next or how much more the body could bear. This unseen opponent thrived in ambiguity, forcing constant negotiation with the unknown. Putting it out there in 2000 with his diagnosis was sort of an act of extraordinary bravery, even if people didn't quite understand it right away. Montel went with transparency rather than concealment, and in a way it broke a long silence that a lot of patients feel when a disease isolates them, in shame or in fear. He told the truth on his own nationally syndicated show, speaking to millions not really as some celebrity protecting his brand, but more like a regular man who had to face a harsh reality head-on. Of course, the public disclosure brought fresh difficulties too, but it also carried this steady, almost unmistakable message: courage and honesty. Montel just wouldn't let MS name him or shut his voice up. Instead, he used the platform he'd built, turning it into advocacy for awareness and support for everyone dealing with chronic illness. And it wasn't only about personal survival either. It pushed farther into reshaping how the whole public talks about these conditions. Physically, the disease moved in, relentlessly. His legs, once strong instruments of military discipline, became a constant source of pain, something he described like walking barefoot over hot coals. His hands trembled, then grew numb, which made the smallest tasks harder than they should have been. Sleep, too, got complicated and went away in pieces, interrupted by pain and exhaustion that felt different from normal tiredness, more like neurological fatigue, the kind that rest just can't fix, not the way people might expect. Still, as things progressed, Montel's resolve stayed in place. The diagnosis required a different form of endurance, not only physical toughness, but emotional openness and systemic advocacy. Through all that change, he wasn't reaching for some exact return to who he used to be. He seemed to be building a new measuring stick for strength, one tied to vulnerability, and yes, perseverance as well. Transition. From this deeply personal reckoning emerged a new mission: one that would channel Montel's courage into advocacy and hope for countless others affected by multiple sclerosis. Advocacy and new purpose. Montel Williams faced his multiple sclerosis diagnosis not just as a personal battle, but as a call to action. In 2002, he established the Montel Williams MS Foundation, a nonprofit aimed at funding research, supporting patients, and breaking the silence surrounding a disease often misunderstood and underestimated. This move transformed his personal struggle into a mission that would resonate far beyond his own life. It was a new chapter rooted in transparency and purpose. The foundation focused not only on medical research, but on addressing the social and emotional isolation many with MS experience. Montel knew firsthand the challenges patients face, not just physically, but in navigating a world that often lacks understanding. He leveraged his public profile to elevate these conversations, turning a condition once hidden into one demanding national attention. His willingness to speak candidly about his symptoms and treatments helped destigmatize the disease. Montel's advocacy extended into the halls of Congress, where he testified multiple times on behalf of veterans and disability rights. His voice carried the unique authority of someone who had served 22 years in the military and now lived daily with a chronic illness. This blending of experience made him a respected figure in both veteran affairs and health advocacy communities. He became a bridge between policymakers and those too often left unheard. Through his foundation, Montel raised millions of dollars for MS research and patient services, funding projects aimed at earlier diagnosis, better treatments, and improved quality of life. The foundation's work also emphasized educating communities least likely to have access to such resources, broadening the impact beyond mainstream populations. Montel was not just a symbol, he was an active participant, driving real change in a landscape often slow to evolve. His public discussions of managing symptoms, the pain, the fatigue, the cognitive challenges, offered hopeful realism. Montel talked openly about the daily balancing act of exercise, medication, and energy conservation, providing a roadmap colored by honesty rather than illusion. This approach was unusual among men of his generation, especially those raised in military culture, where vulnerability was often discouraged. For Montel, embracing transparency became an act of defiance against stigma. The foundation also became a platform for community building, where patients, families, and caregivers found a kind of solidarity and support. Montel's leadership helped make spaces where stories could be shared without judgment, and where struggles were acknowledged as real, and where hope could keep growing. That relational dimension of advocacy grew right alongside the scientific part, underscoring how holistic the journey through MS really is. Montel's efforts mirrored the same discipline and steady consistency that had powered his earlier career. Advocacy was not some extra sideline thing, but a full-time commitment that asked for emotional resilience and strategic thinking. Instead of pulling back, he decided to amplify the voices of people impacted by this relentless disease. In a way, his work reshaped what it means to face adversity, not by burying it, but by turning it into a platform for change, and maybe even for lift. Montel Williams found in advocacy a profound new purpose, one that respected his past while building a future where no one had to suffer multiple sclerosis in silence. His shift from private struggle to public leadership showed that courage often comes as connection, compassion, and a relentless push to make a difference. Yet even with this new mission fueling him, the realities of illness and the burden of sustaining a public role took their toll, both financially and physically. Financial and physical struggles. Montel Williams's health challenges came with a steep financial cost that gradually chipped away at the empire he had built. At the height of his success, his net worth was estimated in the tens of millions, supported by lucrative TV contracts, speaking engagements, and production deals. However, managing a chronic illness and running a sizable foundation required significant resources, which over time reduced his financial standing considerably. By recent estimates, Montel's net worth stands near $10 million, a notable decline from his peak. This shift reflects not only the direct costs of medical care and treatment, but also the expenses related to operating the Montel Williams MS Foundation at a meaningful scale. Healthcare for multiple sclerosis is complex and costly, often involving cutting-edge therapies, physical therapy, and pain management protocols that few insurance plans cover fully. Beyond the monetary factors, Montel faced the daily physical realities of his disease with a determination that many find extraordinary. The neurological pain he described, burning sensations like walking barefoot over hot coals, was relentless and unyielding. Simple tasks like writing, holding objects, or maintaining balance became ongoing battles with his own body. Each success was measured not in fame or fortune, but in moments of physical independence. Sleep, that basic recovery tool taken for granted by most, was another battlefield. Montel's fatigue was neurologically rooted. It was a profound exhaustion that rest could not repair. This kind of fatigue permeated his every waking hour, sapping strength and complicating even ordinary routines. The challenge was less about pushing through than about recalibrating expectations and learning to conserve precious energy. Montel's health struggles were compounded by the financial pressure of sustaining his advocacy work. The balance between meeting his medical needs and ensuring the foundation's success was delicate. Every dollar spent on treatment was a dollar unavailable for research or patient programs. This duality forced difficult choices and underscored the fragility of even the most well-established public figures in the face of chronic illness. Yet, despite these hardships, Montel remained committed to engagement and visibility. He continued to advocate for veterans' healthcare improvements, understanding that his voice could influence policies that affect thousands of lives. His military service and personal experience lent weight to his testimony before Congress, where he pressed for systemic changes that went beyond individual stories. The toll of these intersecting struggles reshaped Montel's lifestyle. Gone were the days marked by flashy residences and endless public appearances. Instead, his life narrowed to essentials, focused on family, health, and measured public involvement. His New York City home became both refuge and vantage point, a place where he could observe the world and conserve strength for another day's fight. His story complicates common narratives of wealth and celebrity, revealing a truth often invisible in public discourse. Success can ebb, and health can fail, even for those who once seemed invincible. Montel's ongoing journey embodies the resilience required to adapt, survive, and find meaning when the scales of fortune tilt unexpectedly. In confronting these trials, Montel Williams teaches that endurance is not measured only in winnings or net worth, but in the grace to navigate loss without surrendering selfhood or purpose. This continued strength redefines what legacy means in the face of relentless adversity. Yet, through every loss and limitation, Montel's enduring spirit and profound impact continue to inspire, shaping a legacy that transcends fame and fortune. Legacy of strength. Montel Williams today is much more than the television star or decorated officer he once was. His journey reflects a deeper, more complex legacy forged through years of relentless personal and physical battles. At 70, he stands as a testament to resilience, not a symbol of flawless triumph, but of courage in the face of continuous, unyielding struggle. His story is one of enduring strength amid loss and transformation. The disease that once threatened to steal his identity has not defined his entire existence. Instead, Montel has redefined what it means to live fully within limitation. Rather than retreating, he meets each day with deliberate motion and steady resolve. His legacy is not measured by ratings or accolades, but by a fierce refusal to let his illness silence his voice or diminish his impact. Montel's openness about his diagnosis and daily life has broken barriers, empowering others facing similar challenges to find hope and authenticity. By sharing his vulnerability publicly, He challenged stigma and expanded the conversation around chronic illness and disability. His presence in the MS community remains a powerful beacon, one built on honesty and lived experience rather than celebrity alone. Family remains a cornerstone of Montel's identity and strength. Through the years, shadowed by illness, his children have become his anchors and his reason for continuing to fight. His relationships, though tested, have deepened in ways not possible during the height of his career. These personal connections have taught him that legacy is also about being present for those who need you most. In advocacy, Montel has created lasting change. His work with veterans' rights and healthcare reform brought much-needed attention to communities too often overlooked. His congressional testimonies and public speaking underline a commitment that transcends personal narrative, reaching into systemic efforts to improve care and understanding for others. This kind of activism enriches his legacy beyond personal courage. Physically, the battles have been harsh and unremitting. Yet even as symptoms have progressed, Montel approaches each new challenge with the same discipline that marked his military service. This steadfastness, accepting difficulty without surrender, is at the heart of his strength. It illuminates the essential truth that resilience is not the absence of pain, but the will to keep moving forward despite it. Montel's financial reality, reduced from past heights, illustrates the price of living fully and giving generously. It speaks to a legacy defined not by wealth accumulation, but by the sincere investment of his time, energy, and resources into causes and people. His commitment to the MS Foundation ensures that his fight extends beyond himself, fostering progress that may outlive him. The permission Montel has granted to others to be both broken and undefeated may be his greatest gift. His story resonates with anyone confronting vulnerabilities previously unseen or unspoken, offering a model of radical honesty and enduring hope. In allowing his true self to be seen, Montel dismantled walls between public persona and private struggle, inviting a broader understanding of strength. Ultimately, Montel Williams exemplifies a legacy forged in the fire of adversity. He teaches us that survival does not mean the absence of suffering, but the refusal to let suffering become the sole definition of who we are. His life story, filled with scars and courage, is a reminder that true greatness arises not from perfection, but from the relentless choice to keep going. Montel Williams's journey reminds us that strength often comes wrapped in struggle, and legacy is built through resilience and honesty. If his story inspired you, please leave a like as a tribute to his courage. Don't forget to subscribe and stay with us for more stories of people who choose to keep going despite the odds.